went back to this house. This is the second time.
Stop doing that.
Went back to the house. I don't understand that at all.
The first time weeks before there was nothing in it.
Right.
But I remember at this next, I was like, they had a big screen TV.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives Podcast, a show where we interview interesting people with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Millie Graham. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you owe me. Joined, as always, by the Harley Quinn of Harleys, the gearhead with a heart of gold. It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
I'm glad to be here.
And today we have a very special guest. He is a husband, father, sober man, founder, owner, operator of Hackers Concrete Impressions, certified West Side legend, the hilltop hero hustler himself. Don't call him Rose Gold because he don't F with it. Platinum C is the name. Get used to it. It's Mr. CJ.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
CJ, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing
You're
well.
good.
Thank you for being here.
Yep.
CJ,
you.
where are you from?
Michigan.
Disgusting. Okay. What was growing up in Michigan like?
I moved here when I was 2.
Excellent. And then when did drinking enter the picture for you?
13.
Nice. Do you remember the first drink at all, or?
I don't remember my first drink. I remember my first drunk. So my parents growing up, you know, my grandparents, that's who raised me, was big drinkers. And when they would have parties and stuff, I would sneak some of their beer and take sips, and I didn't like the taste of it. You know, my dad drank Budweiser, my mom drank Bud Light. And at that time in my life, I thought it was the nastiest thing. But at the end of my, drinking, I was drinking 211 and King Cobra and stuff like that. So like Budweiser and Bud Light was Cristal or Moet compared to that.
What's 211?
Steel Reserve. But they call it.
Oh.
But in the police book, it's aggravated robbery.
Nice.
You drink a Steel Reserve, and then you're more likely to commit an aggravated robbery.
And it's like $1 back then. In 2008 is like $1.35 a can for
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
$7 and you're blacked out.
Right.
And they were like 14%.
Yeah. 9.
No, okay.
Malt liquor. No,
Yeah.
12%. 12%. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
All I remember is like one of my friends bringing him over one day and being like, "Bro, it's only $1.75 and it's like 9-12%, whatever it is." Like, hell yeah! And
I
you're
can smell it right now.
Ugh.
I can smell it.
Oh,
No thanks.
So gross.
It was.
Love it.
So my first drink my first drunk was in I was staying a summer with my Uncle Chucky in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and he was actually in rehab. He's an alcoholic, and he can't drink no more today because he has pancreatitis from drinking. And we was visiting him in rehab, and my Aunt Renee on the way home from visiting him asked if I wanted to drink, that night. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And she said, well, what do you want? And I said, none of that stuff my mom and dad drink. And I said, is there anything like fruity that tastes good? And she was like, yeah, I'll get you some. So she brought me out a 4-pack of Kiwi strawberry wine coolers.
Nice.
There you go.
And I intuitively knew how to bite the ends off a Twizzler and drink it through a Twizzler straw. So I drank the first one, and I could feel it. I could feel the effects. I could feel the hair coming up, standing up on the back of my neck, and the warm feeling, the warm sensation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I drank the other 3, and it was on.
Sure.
That's how most of my disease of addiction, alcoholism was like right from the start. It wasn't like, man, this is cool. I'm going to do this on Fridays and Saturdays. Like I started doing it, on the weekends, every weekend in Fort Bragg, North Carolina for that summer. And then I came back to Columbus and like immediately caught my first felony.
Nice.
13 years old, a felony 2. So I got that.
What was that?
Yeah, what was that
for?
about?
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
freeze over
okay.
the felony 13.
Stole a gun.
No shit.
Did not think
Hell
that
yeah.
it,
Okay.
did not think that it held that much weight to it. I was like, so I stole it, and I come home, and this is at this same time. This is when my parents busted me smoking weed. So I was at school, came home, and I was actually grounded already for some minor stuff. And my dad was sitting there drinking at the counter. And I was like, Dad, can I be off grounded? It was a Friday. I still remember it. And he moved out of the way from the TV where he was because he was blocking my view when I walked in the front door. And he had, I made one of those little weed pipes out of a pill bottle.
Okay.
You know what I mean? A steamroller kind of is what we called it.
Yeah.
And he was like, what's this? And I thought I hit it so good. I was like, it was up in the ceiling. But reason why they was doing such a good job of looking for stuff, there's a detective at my house earlier that day looking for the gun.
Oh.
So,
Oops.
yep, got busted with that. Got busted knowing now that I smoke weed, and then grounded. My parents came, or my uncle and all them came over that night telling me, like, this is just going to lead to something else and to something else. I was like, no. They was right.
Yeah.
It was right, because shortly after it did.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the, like, I remember, like, my parents maybe, like, my mom finds, like, something small, you know, like that. And then there's just, like, it's like a Pandora's box. There's, like, a never ending, like, there's always something else to be found. You're just like, fuck. Like,
No
oh my
lying.
God.
No, I would lie because, like I said, I grew up with my grandparents. It was older. And I blamed it on my friends. I tried to.
Of course.
I was like, it was Stevens. And they're like, no, it's not. And I was like, yeah, it was. And they was like, well, where's that 357 Magnum? And I was like, I didn't even know what it was. Playing stupid, like, what's that?
What's that?
And then the cop, 13 years old, when he's scaring me with, TICO and DYS and everything, I was like, we're about to just send you away for 2 years. And I was like, I sold it to a drug dealer. They never found the gun. So I still got my felony and at 13 years old. And then right after that, I started drinking a lot more. By the age of 16, I was a full blackout drinker. I started eating opiates, around the same time at 13 years old, because I'm in remission from non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And when I had cancer when I was 9 years old, I was getting morphine and stuff when I had bone marrows. So at that age, at 9 years old, and getting this morphine, it should have been a red flag, because I was like, man, this feels good. At 9 years old, one of the hardest at that time sedatives ever. Now carfentanil and all that stuff came out, and they'd be like, count back from 10. And the first time, I think I made it to like 8, and I was like, bam, and then after, getting spinal tabs and bone marrows, quite often, I started getting it. Getting more morphine, and then by the end of it, my mom would sit next to me. She never left the hospital. My grandma, let me rewind that back. My mom passed away from the same kind of cancer that I had when she was 19, and my grandparents raised me since I was 2. So my grandma was sitting next to me, and she was doing a crossword puzzle, and I still remember. And they just put the morphine inside my Broviac tube, which was connected to my chest, and like, I'm looking at my mom, and I am just diehard laughing. And she's looking at me doing a crossword puzzle. She's like, are you feeling good? I was like, this is awesome, Mom. I was like, I love this. 9 years old, morphine's like, I love this. And then 13 years old, I started eating Oxycontins. So I was a neighborhood weed kid.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I used to sell the Mexican brickweed.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Is that okay to say? Okay.
Knock yourself out.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just talked about that on a previous episode. Like smoking like dirt brickweed is such like a Midwestern rite of passage for us.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
I don't know how.
So I started selling weed when I was real young, and actually she's my daughter's mom today, my oldest. And I had all the kids in the neighborhood, they all started smoking weed. But I started eating pain pills, at a young age, and they wasn't about that life at that time. Yeah. And, not everybody has 10, 15 bucks every day to buy a dime or whatever. And they're like, I'd be like, look, just go to your house, check your mom and dad's medicine cabinet. Anything that says may cause drowsiness, or do not operate heavy machinery while taking his med. I said, bring it down here. Yeah. I said, yeah, if it's good, I'll trade you. And my kid's mom came down, and she's like, real Oxycontin 40s, the orange ones, OC 40s. Yeah. And I was like, I knew what they was. Nobody else did. None of the other kids. I was like, these are muscle relaxers. I said, I'll give you $1 a piece. And she was like, bet. She was like, bet. Oh, man. She was like, there's like 160. That was her grandpa that passed away. I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, he passed away for a long time. And, she's 13. She's like, I'll steal 10 a day just to make sure that my grandma don't notice. So she was stealing 10 a day for a few weeks. And like, you would think like a person trading a dime bag of some poop weed for 10 Oxycontin 40s could start balling off of that, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I ate them all. Yeah. I ate them all. Every day. I take the time release off it and bite it in half, and then I start sniffing them. And I was at 13, and then, Vicodins, Norco 10s, and all that stuff was my childhood. And then 16, I was a full blackout drunk. 16 to 22.
Hey, Mental Defectives.
Are you getting married?
If so, we can officiate your wedding for the low, low price of $500.
You have to be in Ohio.
Because Jerry and I are both licensed ministers in the state of Ohio. If interested, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
Now let's get back to the episode.
And you're still continuing with like pills through that drinking phase?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because like for me, and I think maybe you too, like once I got into opiates, it was like I don't have time for alcohol. Like occasionally.
Yeah. I mean, I was dating a bartender at the time.
Well, there you go.
So, I would drink, but that wasn't my main focus.
Yeah.
Now when, heroin came in my life, all the drinking stopped. You know what I mean? So it's like from 16 to 21, drinking every single day, blacking out. I was kicked out of my house, at 14 years old. So I was running the streets of the West Side from, 14 until I got sober. And we had an apartment in Bolton Field on the West Side. And my friends was like, me and Randy, one of my best friends, it was like the spot, it was just a bunch of us best friends living there. And this girl called me and said, we're having a party tonight in Hilliard. And I was like, bet, I'm coming. So I told the guys that we all lived with, me, Randy, Ashton, and everybody, I said, let's go to this party tonight. And they're like, man, something just don't sound right. They was like, we got our own place, and they just come here. And I was like, they didn't know how bad I was at that time, They knew I eat a lot of pills and stuff, and did a lot of cocaine, but they didn't know to the extent how bad I was getting. So my whole intention was to go to this party, and while the guys are trying to get the girls, because if you're from the West Side and there's a party in Hilliard, a lot of our minds think there's going to be girls there. And Hilliard girls are way better. Way better looking than Hilltop girls. Oh, man. We're like, so I'm like, all my friends are like, dude, Hilliard, yeah, we're going to get some girls. And my whole thinking was like, while they're doing that, I'm robbing
in that
them.
medicine cabinet.
The medicine cabinet, but the mom and dad's jewelry boxes. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah,
so at that time, that was my lick, was stealing jewelry. And because my friend's grandpa always bought all the gold, and he took it to Kentucky and melted it down. So that was like my lick all the time. So I was like, why you guys are in there with the girl? But as soon as I walked in this party, it was about 6, 7 o'clock at night, and I was blacked out. And it was me, my best friend Steven, Ashton, and I don't even remember the other dudes with me. But we walked in this house, and I punched this dude. I wasn't even there for 3 minutes. I punched a dude. We get kicked out. We go back to this girl's house that lived in this same apartment complex that the party was at. And it was a girl I actually used to go to school with. And she's like, I'm going to take your friends home and I'll be back. And as soon as I saw her car pull out to take my friends, you know, to Bolton East Estates, I went back to that party by myself. But this time I didn't have none of my boys with me, you know, and bad things happened.
Yeah.
Real bad things happened. I got jumped, and I don't remember none of it. I remember, you know, they call it a gray out, where you're fading in and out of reality. And I woke up outside, and it was one of the cold months, and it was snowing so bad. And I don't know how long I was unconscious on the sidewalk outside. And they stole my belt, and baggy clothes at that time was in style.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
hell
So they
yeah.
stole my belt. I had a white tank top on. They stole my jacket, one of my boots. So I stood up. I'm trying to hold my pants up, and the snow was like probably up to my calves, you know, and it's
yeah.
freezing and it's
shit.
snowing so bad. Don't even know how long I was unconscious for. And I'm trying to make my way up to Rome Hill Road, and I wouldn't have made it. But by the time when I started to get to walking, I was looking down and holding up my pants and looking at all the blood, you know, on top of the snow,
Oh, yeah.
melting the snow because so much streams of blood was coming off my face.
Yeah.
And I just looked back at the snow and I was like, oh my God, dude, I'm not going to make it. And I woke up, somebody got me help that night. And I woke up in Doctors West Hospital. And as soon as I opened my eye, my grandfather was at the end of my bed, and a tear dropped his eye. And growing up, my dad was always, you know, real men don't cry.
Right.
You know, he's from Detroit, and my whole family's from Detroit, and he's a biker too. He was a biker. He passed away. 270 pounds, tattoos. You know, did some time before, and just, you know, but a good dude. He was a really good dude. But he always said, "Men don't cry." And I opened my eyes, and my eye socket was shattered. My nose was broke. I was bleeding from my brain.
Ooh.
My lips was all stitched up. And the look of disappointment in his face, you know. And he just turned around and walked out of the room. And then I get released tonight from the hospital. And that night, that's when I got introduced to heroin. That same night.
Don't waste no time.
It was supposed to be pills. but my
A
buddy,
tale as old as time.
my buddy was like, yeah, I get you pills. And he come out with black tar heroin. I was like, that's cool too. He's
that'll
like,
work.
it's just the same. I was like, all right.
Cool.
Yep. So that started something. Like I said, you know, when I put something in my body, it didn't matter uppers or downers. I was everything.
Yeah.
Right.
I put that in my body, and it was a roller coaster, you know, getting ready to take off.
Right.
So you survived this just incredible ass beating, and then get started on dope, and then where do we go from there?
So that started this phenomenon of craving, right? So it slowed down my drinking.
It'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it slowed down my drinking, and a couple months later, I met a girl, and she's actually the mother of my oldest son. And little did she know who I was. And she had like everything that was like foreign to me. You know, she was going to school. She had a degree. It was a good job at Chase Bank Fraud of America out in Polaris. And little did she know who I was. And we started dating. We kicked it off, and 3, 4, 5 months later, she found out what I was doing. You know, at that time, I'm smoking heroin. So, like, the bottom of the aluminum foil where it's burnt would always get me busted because I lay it right on the sink. And it's like, what's his black ashes for? And then somebody told her, like, no, that's for heroin. you don't smell no cigarettes in here, you know? And it's like, so she was like, you know, I'm trying to, and her family was in recovery. And she was like, you know, I'm trying to do this with my life. And I can't be with you if you're going to do this. So I was like, all right, I said, what should I do? And she was like, go to Maryhaven. I said, I'm going. And that following week, I called Maryhaven. I went in detox, and I was in there for, I think, 16 days. And prior to going into Maryhaven, I took a DNA test with, you know, the girl that was younger, OC girl, Oxycontin girl.
Yeah.
I took a DNA test with for this little bleach blonde hair girl with her. And I called home, and it was New Year's Eve, and my mom answered the phone. And I said, Mom, what's up? And she says, congratulations, honey. And I was like, why, what's up? And she's like, Carmen's 99.99% yours. And I didn't have no feelings, you know, whatsoever, you know. And I have 4 kids today, and they're in my life. But I remember, you know, when she told me that, I didn't even think nothing about it. I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't think, man, I better, you know, try to get my life together and maybe listen to well, I can't say listen to these people in there, because, like, I was smoking, you know, 2 grams of heroin a day when I was in detox, and everybody's like, you're smoking $200 worth? You need to shoot it. And I'm like, man, I'm supposed to be in here getting better. Right. You guys are telling me to bang it in my main vein.
Right.
And I said, okay. I said, don't tell Sarah, though. I said, because I'll tell her. I was nervous, fear. I didn't want to lose Sarah, you know, because I loved her. And she got on the phone, and that following week I was getting transferred over to, at that time it was called Dan Cannon Hall.
Sure.
And it's called something different now, but it's a longer stint of Maryhaven and like a 60, 90-day program. And I was like, I'm going to Dan Cannon Hall this weekend. I get my first, you know, face-to-face visit. Do you want to come and see me? And she was like, yep, I'll be there. So she came in that Saturday. As soon as she sat down, she was like, what's up? You know, how am I doing and everything? And I said, I'm ready to go home. And she's like, what? You just got here like 4 days ago. And I was like, babe, I know. I was like, but I got 21 days sober. I was like, I got this. 21 days.
Famous last words.
Yeah,
21 days. I mean, I thought I couldn't draw a sober breath for an hour. So I was like, 21 days was a lifetime.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, all right, go get your bags. And I went and got the stuff, my bags and stuff. And I remember about to leave, and everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, you just got here 4 days. You know how hard it is for people to get beds, and you're leaving in 4 days. And I was like, it's okay, guys. You'll watch. I'm going to start bringing the meetings in here. And I left, and she wanted to take me to a dinner for a celebration. And she went to Old Charlie's over there in Georgesville Square. It was about 14 minutes from Milam Creek. You know what I mean? Not far at all. And we sit down, and the phone rings. And it was one of my boys. And he's like, man, I'm so proud of you, but if you ever need anything. All them people that my mom told me, like, those ain't your friends. And he's actually sober today.
The Mental Defectives Podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More Is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
So you get this phone call at your celebratory 3 weeks of rehab dinner,
Yeah.
and what happens?
So he's like, man, I'm so proud of you. He's like, but if I got yada, 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 if you need anything. And of course, I was like, I'll let you know. And I didn't have no defense whatsoever.
You were ready to go.
So I didn't think, you know, on the way home, if you'd have asked me, like, I want to stay sober forever, but I didn't have that defense, you know. And I hung up the phone, and she's like, who was that? And I was like, that was my Uncle Chucky. Let me rewind this. And so people would come in and talk to us, you know, about working some of these 12 steps that people do. And they talked about step 9. and it was making amends. And
Oh, God.
So I sat
Jesus
down.
I already know where we're
Christ.
going.
Yeah, I
me
sat
too.
down, and she was like, "Who was that?" And I was like, "That was my Uncle Chucky." I was like, "Babe, can I have $50 off you?" I said, "I stole $50 off of him prior to going into Maryhaven. I want to make amends to him." And the look on her eyes, she was just so happy. She was like, "Oh my God, you were really gonna do the deal?" I was like, I am. I said, "Can I go right across the street?" I said, "I'll be right back." I was like, "He's actually right at UDF." And she was like, "Yeah, go." So I left and went and did the deal. And I started a phenomenon of craving, and that time, because they say, when you stop some and it started back up, you picked up where you left off. But then my friend says, it's like, no, like you pick right back up where you would have been, if you never quit.
Ooh, yeah.
Because it was so true. I mean, it hit me so hard that time. And then I immediately get her pregnant. Not at O'Charlie's, but I immediately...
Was this at O'Charlie's?
Right,
Was
nice.
this the UDF parking lot? Like, where was it?
So she's pregnant this time. She finds out, because this time I couldn't hide it, because when the people told me I was wasting it, smoking it, I needed to do it like this.
yeah.
Then I started doing it
Yeah.
like that,
You can't hide that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, she loved me, and she was like, she's pregnant with my son, and she was like, I'm just going to get an apartment. You be a stay-at-home dad. If that's what you're going to do. I was like, yeah.
Where do I sign up?
What?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be the best heroin junkie you ever saw. Promise. Making dinner and everything.
Right.
And so she is pregnant. We got an apartment. This time I'm just out there dealing and running the streets so hard at this time. So hard. My disease of addiction was it was insane. And I came home one night and it was a blackout. She's 5.5 months pregnant. And I introduced her to that drug while she was 5.5 months pregnant with my son. And I didn't even know that I did that until shortly after I ended up doing some stupid stuff and I was going on my way to prison. And it was literally like 2 weeks later. And so she's at this apartment. Actually, we get kicked out of this apartment because I'm breaking into the neighbor's house, stealing their jewelry, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
maintenance man saw me. Like, so,
Oh wow! It's always the maintenance men. Those guys,
no
maintenance
narc.
men.
I
so
know,
at this
narc.
apartment that I was at, like, us and the neighbors share balconies.
Yeah.
So I just hopped right over. We're on the third floor. We're on the third floor.
Don't mind
Right.
if I do.
Yeah, I slide it open.
Yeah.
I go in there. I mean, and I open this jewelry box and it's loaded.
Ooh.
Loaded.
Jackpot.
It's one of these jewelry boxes that's like, it's a big heart, and then you pick it up. I mean, and this thing is hefty. And you pick it up, and then you open it up, and there's a smaller jewelry box, and you open that up, and there's a smaller jewelry box. So like the third one in, and it's just filled up with gold and diamonds. And I was like, bingo. I hopped back over the rail, went inside. For some reason, that was like my deal was, stealing and breaking into stuff. And because this time, my drug dealing days was gone. There was no Frank Lucas in my future. And I'd always get high and go back to the house that I broke in. So
What?
I don't
Why?
know. I don't,
What?
because I'd always think I missed something. I always think I forgot something. And that day I did. Because when I went back over, I opened up the door, and there was a pair of jeans there, and it was the guy's wallet, and it was filled up with stacks. So I was like, cool. You know what I mean?
What?
So we get kicked out of there. Not that night, because a couple of days later, now it's like I'm the balcony bandit. So I'm like 4 balconies down, jumping up to the second floor, and the guy comes around, right? And I have her phone. She's at work, and so if I'd have just shut up and just stayed still and the maintenance man walked by, I'd have been cool. And he knew where I lived, so he walked by and I act like I'm on the phone. I'm like, yeah, if you just want to come and pick me up. And he's like, what are you doing over here?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even remember what I said, but I was like, I'm locked out, and we get an eviction notice on the door, and she's like, what'd you do? And I was like, I have no idea. They're just accusing me. And then we move into Hilton, West Side, behind Speedway, hood apartments. And we're there for about 2 weeks. And then I get in trouble and go to jail. And I broke into a house in broad daylight on Climb Road. That's next door, if you're familiar with the Climb Road. That's next door to the CPD station.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So I broke in 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I went back to this house. This is the second time.
Stop
went
fucking
back-
doing that!
We went back to the house. I don't understand that at all.
The first time weeks before, there was nothing in it.
Right.
But I remember at this next, I was like, they had a big screen TV. So
Back when that was like a good...
yeah, good
Right,
hustle,
right.
good lick. But obviously, so I break in this house. But this time, because our house got burglarized before, and I got charged with all this stuff, so I'm not like holding myself,
Right. Yeah.
future charges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like in there, and this time they deadbolted the inside and outside, so it's only a key. And I'm here with a 50-inch TV. I'm like, how do I get out?
Yeah.
I hear the cops coming. I hear the helicopter.
Oh.
2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm pushing this 50-inch TV at an angle through the front window. Front window. Climb Road's
Oh
right
my
here, and
God.
I'm pushing it right through on Climb Road. And I'm trying to run because her car is parked right over here, like you're going to like Wedgwood, all them apartments back there. And I'm trying to run over there to make it to the car, and a CPD car flies by. And I'm like, he missed me. And then here comes 12 more. And then a helicopter.
Yeah.
So I set the TV down gently, like I'm coming back to get it.
Yeah. You can't
Yeah.
scratch it now.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
He won't take it after that.
Yeah.
So I run. Didn't think they caught me. Didn't think they would catch me. And I bolted. And I ran around, and I thought I lost the helicopter. And I ran in this lady's shed. And then 2 minutes, I was like, you hear cops like, come on out of there, dude. And I was like, ugh. So I get busted. And this time, I'm facing multiple felonies. And I didn't know that I had stuff in my pocket. Ooh. Paraphernalia. So I had
Yeah.
a syringe.
Ugh.
And the cop said, do you have anything in your pocket? And I thought I threw it all out.
Yeah.
And he stuck his hand in my pocket.
Oh no.
And the needle stuck in his finger. And if you're familiar with the workhouse like this, cops will whip you.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like,
damn.
and it stuck to his finger, and he pulls out his hand, and the needle stuck to his finger, and he's like, and he like whispers in my ear, he's like, you better hope to God that you don't have no disease. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh fuck.
Thank God I didn't. But this time,
Do they hit you with like an extra assault
I was
charge
gonna
for
say,
that?
like, assaulting a police officer?
No, they didn't. They did. I thought I was so nervous, man, just because
I thought you were going to say that added like 4 new
Yeah,
felonies.
that's what I was gonna say.
I thought I was gonna get my face kicked in when I got to the counter.
Yeah,
Oh, that too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, man, this is not going to be fun. I'm going to take the boat ride down, upside down, strapped down to the gurney. Because that's what they would do is like put people on a gurney, strap them up, and then tip them upside down and slide them down the concrete steps. You know what I mean?
Oh shit.
And so I was like, man, this sucks. And like I said, she's pregnant. She's 6 months pregnant. And this time I knew I'm not getting out. And I was, my son was born September 18th of 2009. And I was shipped off to the penitentiary September 21st of 2009. So I met him through the glass, and I was shipped off to CRC. While I went to CRC, because I was going to do some time, and I get to CRC, which is a 23-hour, lockdown before you go shipped off to your parent institution. And at that time, it was Noble Correctional Center was like the worst prison that you could go to. They called it gladiator school because there was a lot of young, like 21 and under, 18 to 21-year-old gangbanging kids from like Windsor Terrace, you know.
They got something to prove in there.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and doing my push-ups. Right before chow. And my intake comes under the door. And I had this bunkie, man. This guy had no reason to go to prison. I mean, he was just, he looked so innocent. But he was drinking on a 4-wheeler and wrecked and killed his passenger, his friend.
Oh, shit.
So he was going for a long time. And this kid was like, you could tell it was about
scared
to
shitless.
Yeah.
So he's sitting down. He made his own little noodle break, and he's like, so my intake comes in, and he gets upstairs his food, and I'm down doing push-ups, and I get up, and he's like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Noble," and he was like, "Oh." And I got down and started, instead of 25 push-ups, I started becoming 50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, I better get big. I was like, so, and I got to Noble and Caldwell County, and man, it was like what you see off of TV. People shaking the fence. It's the biggest compound. It's 2,500 inmates. And people shaking the fence because you got write-ins that come in on Mondays. You know, so everybody's out there shaking the fence and seeing who's there, if their boys are there, who's coming in, and blah, 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 or trying to intimidate people. And the fence is shaking. And I just went to commissary like 2 days before this. So
you look like Santa Claus walking in there.
No, you have your locker box, which is metal.
Oh.
Metal. It's like 18 inches tall, 2.5 foot long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2 foot deep, and I got it filled with, like, you know, my prison blues, my food. I mean, the thing weighs like 40 pounds, and I have to carry it so far. You know, you get off this bus, and they're like, "Go." There's where you got to go, and you look up all the way up on this hill, and I'm not kidding. It's like probably a quarter to a half a mile up, and I'm just like this, and you got 2,500 inmates the whole time on that fence. Like, don't drop that box. Do not drop that box, because that's a sign of weakness, and they're trying to intimidate you. And growing up, my mom and dad would always say, "Your friends that you hang out with, you're going to be in prison with them." And all of a sudden, I started hearing CJ,
Shit.
all over. I'm like, so this is where you got. My mom and dad was right. My friends was all in prison. And I was like, so this is where you guys been.
Damn.
Yeah. And
how long were you in there total?
Noble, I think I was in there for about 15 months. And then I had to go do CBCF afterwards.
Gotcha.
So I did like 5 months in the county, you know, 15 months in Noble, and then 5 months in CBCF. And then while I was in prison, though, I found out that night that I introduced my kid's mom to heroin, because they sent me a picture of my son, and I saw an abscess on her leg. I knew what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What's up?" And she told me what happened that night. And for some reason, something in my brain, I remembered, like her sitting on the couch, and she's pregnant, and her sitting on the couch like this. And something just clicked in my brain that night. And I remember walking around, because I used to sell heroin, and I was bagging up all these balloons. And I remember walking around the corner after I introduced her to that drug, and she's like passing out like that. You know what I mean? And so I was like, my son was born healthy, thank God. You know, he was born healthy, and she quit before he was born. And I get out of prison. I had no defense, you know, again. I was introduced to a program, and I tried to start doing the stuff that they told me, but that lasted, I think, 15 days. And I ended up relapsing, and then it's me and her now, you know. And I was out there for 8 months, and that brought me to my sobriety date, May 16th of 2011. But them last 8 months, it was the craziest 8 months I ever had in my life. You know, especially with a 15-month-old son, 16-month-old son in the back seat. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Okay. So you have okay.
And like I said, how I hustled money was, robbing, stealing, burglaries, and all that. And I'd do that stuff with him in the back seat. And crazy.
What was the final thing that really, because it's like all this stuff, like the getting beat up, prison, none of this is enough for you to say like, okay, I'm done. But what happened in that 8-month period that was like the last, like the straw that broke the camel's back?
So I went back to jail.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sitting in the county. I worked in the kitchen. I was a kitchen runner, and we worked, 12 to 13 hours a day. There's 800 and something inmates in, Franklin County, and I was the bologna guy. I made the bologna sandwiches. So if you ever went to jail, in 2010, 2011, and went to court, I was the one that made your bologna sandwiches.
You're welcome.
Right.
I've never even touched a piece of bologna since then, ever. It's not even allowed in my house. Good thing none of my kids like it. My wife don't like it, so that's cool. And prior to this time going to jail, I remember I used to listen to people. If like you have more time, right? If you went to prison a lot more than anybody, you're the person that I'm asking advice from.
Right.
Like, that's so dumb. Like, obviously they're not good at what they do.
The person that gets caught the most is who
well,
I
you
want
got
to take.
7
Right.
numbers.
Of
What
course.
should I do?
Yeah.
And so when I went to prison the first time, this old head, old head came in the pod, and you could tell he did like 10 numbers, and that was just his life. And I was like, man, what should I do? And he was like, man, who's your judge? And I said, Tim Horton. And he said, he's a Mormon.
Tim Horton?
Yeah, like the donuts.
Okay.
He's like, he's a Mormon. I still don't even know what a Mormon is today. I didn't even ask what that was, why, what, where, anything. I said, okay, so what do I do? He says, you got to throw up the Mormon symbol. I said, what is that? And he like put his hands like in a circle like this. And he's like, show him this. He'll show you forgiveness. He didn't. He sent me to prison, and I got back to the pod that day, and he's like, what happened? He's all excited thinking I was going home, and I had like 5 F2s and all this stuff. Like, nobody's going home.
No.
Like, he's like, what's up, man? You going home? I was like, no, I'm going away for years. And he's like, did you show him the Mormon symbol? I was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, he may not have seen it. And I was like, oh no, I was walking back and forth along the table, making sure he saw it. And he's like, man, he must have had a bad day. I was like, all right, possibly. But this next time, fast forward, and it brought me to my sobriety day, May 16th. I go back to jail, and I'm in the county at this time, and I'm working in the kitchen. And the county is, you got like 19 people in a dorm, or in a cell, 19 people in a cell, and you got another cell next door where everybody, are just sitting there watching TV, our hands through the bars and stuff like that. And I'm talking to this guy named Jack, and Jack's an old West Sider. I mean, he's still out there walking down Sullivan Avenue today, and he's probably at least, I would say, almost 70 years old, tall, bald-headed, just an OG of the West Side. And I'm like, Jack, what should I do? And he's like, man, it sounds like you need the House of Hope. He's like, it sounds like you got some people out there that need you out there. And see, I got smart, right? So I looked at, I'm like, you can't see him over there. You can see his hands. But I remember like looking, I was like, Jack, if the House of Hope was such a good place, I said, why are you in here? And he was so real. He's like, CJ, this is my life. He's like, I've been doing this my whole life. Damn. He's like, I come in here and, because it's just about to get spring. He's about to get let out. Because he'd always go in there on an F5 or something, so they lock him up for, the wintertime 3 months.
Yeah.
He gets his weight up
Yep.
and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, why can't I just catch a F5? It's like, dude, he did it smart. And he's like, I mean, it sounds like you really need to, you got kids out there and a good woman. And so the day of my court date comes, and I had 2 public defenders, and one was about to retire, and she was training the other one. And they called her Mean Green Carrillo, right? And this is a public defender, but she was such a savage, such a savage. She always took my cases and everything. Like, yeah, went to prison the first time, but she, with all them F2s and stuff that I went to prison for, she got it knocked down a lot. And so she comes back there and she said, "What do you want to do this time, CJ?" And I said, "I want to try the House of Hope." And she says, "Why?" And I said, "Because I don't know." I said, "Because I don't know how to do life." I said, "I can't stop using heroin. I can't stop smoking crack." I was like, "I don't know what to do." And she's like, "I'll try it." She's like, let me go tell your prosecuting attorney. And she went and told the prosecuting attorney, and the prosecuting attorney says, "Yeah, I'll try to get him in the House of Hope if he pleads out to this felony." And at that time, it was an F5. I was like, "Bet." I was like, "I'll plead out to that." And she thought she won, and she came back and she says, "Nah, your judge says you owe him an X amount of years, and you're going to do day for day." And this day that I went to court was the first day that the brand new courthouse was built. The first day that the brand new one was built back in 2011. And I was the first one going to see the judge that day. And I walk in, and then since I was at the county, they was doing basically a little trial run. So it's not a lot of people going to court that day. It's just, miscellaneous people. And I already have my court date, so they're going to do transport, under the street, under Front Street and all that to get over to the new courthouse and see your judge. And so when I get in the holding cell, there was only one person going to court with me that day, and he was a Hispanic dude. He didn't speak much English or anything, and at that time, the epidemic was so crazy with heroin, and that's who I was buying most of our heroin from, was Hispanic people, and I didn't speak Spanish. I walked in and I said, "What are you here for?" And he was there for 36 ounces of heroin, a kilo, and I was like, "Oh man," I was like, "Please let me go before you, because you're about to get smoked."
Yep.
Yeah.
So the judge, when the lady told me I owed my judge this amount of years, she said, "You got 5 minutes to prepare." The guy, the heroin brick, he was going in first. She was like, "You got 5 minutes to prepare." I had all these letters in my shirt. I had 7 pages of the workhouse paper, which is 35 lines. 35 lines on one sheet. I had 7 of those pages front and back filled up. So when the judge asked me what do I have to say for myself, I'm going to read him this story. And when they said you got 5 minutes to prepare, I didn't even look at those letters. I didn't try to rehearse them. I didn't even think about them. It was the first time that my rear view mirrors turned in. And because prior to that, my rear view mirrors was on everybody else. It was this person's fault. It was the Franklin County Sheriff's fault. It was the CPD's fault. It was, the judge's fault and probation officer. All this stuff is everybody else's fault. And that day they turned in, and I knew it was my fault. It was like a moment of clarity. I was defeated. I was broken. I was hopeless. Didn't know it. Did not know it. Did not know it. I thought I was strong and thought I could quit. I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And so they go in there, and I was thinking that whole time, when I was thinking about what I was going to say to this judge, I was thinking about my dad. And he always said, "You make your bed, lay in it." And when I went to prison, when I get in trouble, he's like, "You made your bed, lay in it." And it was the first time, man, I was like, "All right, I'm going to do this. It is what it is, man." And I was thinking about Austin and Carmen. Those are my kids at that time. And I was like, by the time I get out, they're going to be this age and this age. And obviously the moms are not doing well. So I'll probably never see them again, because they'll probably be rewarded to the state. So I was just defeated, and I was anger. And I go in the courtroom, and they're reading off everything. And, He said, Mr. Acker, what do you have to say for yourself? Now, shackled for my hands and my feet because I wore oranges, so they call me a flight risk because I worked in the kitchen, so some people get to go outside and like take trash out and everything. And so I shackled for my hands and my feet. And when he read that, he said, what do you have to say for yourself? I puffed up my chest because I was about to just be like, give me what you got. And I just broke down crying. And it was like the first time that I cried in many, many years, you know, and it just, I mean, it was one of those ugly cries. You know, I mean, it was so much. It was like waterworks all over the table. And I can't wipe my nose off. I got snot coming down my nose. Yeah. And I can't wipe my face off because I'm shackled to my feet. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it just, bleh, you know, like a 2-year-old, you know, and he gave me the House of Hope, you know, and I got to the House of Hope September 1st of 2011. And that started my journey to recovery.
Damn.
Bam.
That's
Love that.
That's, I don't even have questions. I'm so invested in the story.
Hey, Mental Defectives, would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com so we can help you make a lot of money.
Now let's get back to the episode.
All right. You get into treatment. You make it through treatment. Where do the kids come back into the story?
Okay, so I got sober. I started doing the deal. I was still with my kid's mom, my son's mom at that time, and she was using, and I was leaving with her on weekend passes, and then that happened for about 2 to 2.5 months. And something told me, it was like, CJ, you know, it's like God told me, is like, you're going to die within a couple weeks of, after you leave here, after you coin out, because that's what they say at the House of Hope, you coin out, you graduate. And something just told me, and it just like smacked me in the face, and was like, you're going to die. You know, because my counselor never said nothing. John Riley, rest in peace, man. I was the last person that coined out of his class, man, before he passed away. And he'd always just look at me and shake his head like, you know, and something told me. And so I parted my ways with her, and I started getting real serious about my recovery and going to all my meetings and stuff. And I get out of the House of Hope. This time I got the 2 kids. I get custody of Austin in 2013. I've had custody of him ever since. So for the past 11 years, he's been with me, and I've been the sole provider for him. Awesome kid, you know, and he used to go to all my 12-step groups with me all the time. I remember. I mean, that was his deal, you know, and Carmen, I got custody of her in 2017. But prior to getting custody of my 2, I got in a relationship with a beautiful lady, and she's my wife today. And we got married in 2015, and you know, it's the way life worked out, you know, is so cool. It is so cool, you know, because like I have 2 kids with my wife today, you know, and I got to be there from the beginning and change diapers, and I'll tell you, that was a cool thing. So when we got married in 2015, Milligram was the one that took our picture for when I proposed, so shout out to him.
You're welcome.
After we got married in 2015, we tried to have a kid, you know, for a couple years, and we just didn't think it was in our cards anymore, and I didn't think it was in my cards anymore. And we lived in this little 2-bedroom condo in Hilliard at that time. How ironic. And we got the privilege to be homeowners. You know, we got the privilege to be a homeowner. We bought a house together in Grove City. And a couple weeks after we bought this house, you know, found out my wife was pregnant, you know, and we had baby Jackson November 27th of 2017. I got custody of Carmen at that time, you know. Austin was my A1, you know. He was just my A. I keep on saying He was my recovery baby. And in March 22nd, we had baby Case James. So I have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 16-year-old. So a little bit of gap in between the oldest and the youngest.
You're one away from a basketball team.
I was.
Have you considered one more to get a solid starting 5 out there?
No, I mean she wanted it, but I was like, I can't. I was like, I want to retire. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't want to.
I think you can. It's when you take one and you put, I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
Yeah. I always thought it was the milk in Grove City because as soon as we moved there, we started having kids.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, and now my wife's on this workout journey and everything. Shout out to Pocket Blonde Fitness, got my wife in this journey.
Shout out
Lacey.
Pocket Blonde Fitness, friend of the show.
She's still killing it today, and she's very serious about her health today, and we're living a good life. We got, like I said, we're so busy with the kids' sports, and today was their last day of school. So when I get home tonight, we're probably do something cool. You know what I mean? Do something cool with the kids. I think it's just me and Austin because I think she's working out at Dad Bod Fitness in Grove City.
Oh, nice.
So me and Austin, I think I'm going to take them to Roosters.
Hell yeah.
Sweet. So, concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that all start?
So I was going to a 12-step meeting, and my sponsor was like, hey, somebody wants you to call them. And I was like, I didn't even notice the name. And then as soon as I called him, I heard his voice and I knew who he was because I meet so many people every day. And I knew who it was as soon as I heard his voice. I was like, what's up? And he was like, yo, you need a job? And I was like, no. I was like, I'm actually, working for my brother-in-law at that time. I was doing hardscape and landscape and stuff like that. And he was like, okay. He's like, we're hiring, a newcomer concrete as a union job. And he was like, it pays $27.92 an hour. Is like, when do I put my 2-week notice in with my brother? And he's like, you can't. He's like, you got to start tomorrow. And I was like, I called my brother and, or probably start that following Monday because I came to work that next day and I told my brother-in-law. And that's when I started doing concrete. And my foreman, man, he was so good at, concrete and finishing and just the detail aspect of it and how clean he would do work and stuff like that. And he took pride in his work, and I took a lot of that from him, and I started doing these side jobs. I didn't even know how to do concrete. I didn't like do shoddy jobs or anything, but I'd hire all the finishers at my company. It's like the sweetest thing whatever. It was like, give them a couple $100 after work. Of course they're coming, I'll pocket some cash, they pocket some cash, and it's a win-win situation. And then in 2000 we took off with Hackers Concrete in the winter of 2017. We made our LLC because I was getting so busy, with working 50 to 55 hours at Newcomer Concrete on top of doing side jobs.
Sure.
Yeah. And Stephanie, my wife, was like, look, you got to do one or the other. She is like, I'm pregnant. She's like, Jack's about to be here. She's like, I was like, well, what do you think I should do? And she was like, babe, do whatever you want. She was like, you're good at what you do. Do you think it's going to be hard for you if it didn't work out? Do you think it's going to be hard for you to go get a job somewhere? And I was so full of fear, but it was cool for somebody to have my back like that. In marriage, it's like, yeah, you want to run a company? Do it. And I was like, all right. She was like, because she's a real big believer in God and all that stuff. And I was like, let's do it. And so I took off in 2018, and it's been crazy busy ever since.
And what kind of jobs? Because I see like the posts and stuff. So it's like patios, driveways. Like what's
patios, driveways, sidewalks, porches, anything with the house. I try to stay away from like foundations and stuff like that because I don't like to do like builder work and stuff like that. Nothing against, you know, builders and stuff like that, but I like decorative, you know, so I like stamping, concrete, buff wash, exposed, stuff like that. So we do some commercial. I have a few commercial clients, but I try to keep that to a minimum because once you get so big in the commercial world, you don't get a say-so and stuff.
Right.
So I always told myself, like, I'll run my company. Like, I'm not going to have a commercial person say, we need you here tomorrow. We don't care about your clients that you have. You can go ahead and push those off or else you're never using us again. So the commercial clients that I got right now, they're super awesome.
So you're probably slammed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got, you know, 9 guys that it's not your typical concrete crew. So if you ever worked in concrete, man, they just get out of the car. You know, say if you got a group of 6, 2 of them's drinking, you know, at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, eating Speedway hot dogs. You got on top of, you know, smoking weed, and then you got, you know, 3 other guys just screaming, just yelling. Just, it seems like, why are you mad? Like, for what is wrong with you? Like, especially when concrete shows up. Oh my God. Like, you'd think like it's all right. Concrete's at 10 o'clock. It's 9:50. People will be cool, calm, and collect. And soon as the truck comes around the corner, oh my gosh. I mean, you think ADD and anger management just smacked this dude in the face. And they're running around like, you only been doing this for 32 years. You act like you don't know what's going on. Like, but the 9 guys that I got, man, it's like it took me since 2018 to get the crew that I got, you know, and they're awesome. It's a brotherhood, you know, and we got some good workers that produce some good quality products. So I'm very happy with my guys.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
How do I go about getting if I want a new porch or some steps or something in my house, how do I get Hackers Concrete on the job?
You can email us. Just go right to Google Hackers Concrete Impressions and fill out the form. And the office, my wife, shout out to Stephanie, we'll get back to you. You know,
Shout out Stephanie.
very, very quick. She's good at what she does. And, you know, that's what a lot of people said, you know, about us. They're happy with how I walk them through the whole project, you know, because when you go through something like this and a big home renovation like this, people don't know what to expect. You know what I mean? They're thinking in their head that it's going to take weeks or months, or their guard's going to get messed up and whatnot. So, like, I'll email them and then tell them the night before, like before starting the project, you know, like, we'll be there in the morning, you know, please just have the cars out of the driveway because we don't want to have anything, you know, any accidents or whatever to happen. We'll lay out plywood all the way to, if it's a patio out back, we'll lay out the plywood all the way back so we keep the grass damage to a minimum and stuff like that. Because my biggest thing, and my guys know this, is like, if we do a patio, I want the neighbors to drive by and be like, man, I saw Hackers Concrete trucks here. What? I wonder what they was doing. You don't even see nothing messed up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So getting it curious. But most of our stuff is all word of mouth, you know, and it's we've been blessed with, you know, the clients that we've been having. So
hell yeah. What advice would you have for someone looking to get sober?
Oh man, sit down, shut up. No, I'm kidding.
That's solid.
Well, I love every time someone gives us a completely different answer, and it's always fucking fire. Every time.
Well, because I mean, it's like I said, remember when I said I went to Maryhaven and I was like, I got this.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Right. Literally 14 minutes later, I shot dope, you know? And because I didn't know anything, you know, and I still don't know anything. And I went to, you know, one of my meetings and groups last night, and you know, just kicking it with these old timers, man. I mean, there's so many old timers at my meeting, and I just feed off them. you know, and I listen to what they say, and you know, they're pretty hardcore. Like they'll tell you to shut up. Like we got a buzzer that goes off in 2 minutes for your comment. And I'm like, thanks. You know, dude, ego deflation real quick. So my best thing is just to pass every time. You know, pass. Because once I start talking, it's like, yep, you ain't. It's that I'll talk over that buzzer. So, you know.
So any advice on somebody trying to start a business?
So this year, you know, and shout out to you guys on saying, you know, people with mental health. You know, this past year I went through like a depression, and I never thought about that, believed about that. You know, I thought it did not pertain to me. So it never hit. But my business has gotten so busy and so demanding. You know, my company's growing and my guys are, you know, getting bigger and better, you know, and that comes, and what comes with that, you know, is a lot of demanding things, you know, meeting homeowners, drawing up designs, estimates, you know, meeting clients all the time throughout the day, you know, taking phone calls, you know, because you have homeowners that sometimes can be unhappy with something, you know, and my biggest thing is like trying to make sure when I leave a project that they're super happy, you know, and so I went through this like stressed out, anxiety, depression, and all this stuff, and it all came from the business. And one of my buddy Tyler from CLMS told me, he's one of my mentors, and he was like, the most successful people in this world are the people that can eat the most crap and keep it pushing. And so that stuck with me, right? So it's like a lot of people when they're running a company and they shut down a company, it's not that they necessarily lose it, you know, or they did shoddy work or robbed people. I was talking to a guy last night, and he had 10 dump trucks at one time, you know, and 10 guys. And then he shut it all down, you know, because he was like, I mentally couldn't do it no more. Because that's the biggest thing. And it's like, year 5, that's if you make it to year 5, that's what people my buddy Rob Ramos, he said if you make it to year 5, that's when, you know, your company's going to start escalating. And I wasn't ready for growth. You know, so anybody starting a business, you just gotta, for me I just gotta learn balance. You know, always produce good work. Whatever you do, keep your word. You tell a homeowner, you tell a client, you tell a general contractor, you tell them you're going to do something, do it. You know, just do it. Don't say it just to get the check and then try to cut corners afterwards, because that's not a good thing for your name. You know, and like I said, Hackers Concrete, Hackers is my last name, so it's like I hustle for my dad's last name. Because remember, he was the one that was standing at the end of my bed and a tear dropped out of his eye, you know, and he was so hurt and so disappointed at his grandson at that time. Now it's like, I'm making a household name. I'm hustling for your name, Dad. You know, even though he's passed away. You know, I went to a graduation this past weekend, and my cousin Lisa and all her friends was there, and we all grew up together, and I didn't even remember her friends, but they all knew me. And they was like, I am so glad you're doing good today. And then Lisa was like, everybody knew you back in the day was a bad kid. And I was like, and they was like, man, it's so good to see that you. And she's like, I see your concrete trucks all over. And she was like, you're doing so well. So a lot of those things I take for granted. You know what I mean? So to be able to step back and, you know, I've watched people start their companies and start to grow and stuff like that, but I can't tell them what to do. They got to learn this stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? The only way I learned is when stuff hit the fan. When I'm coasting through life and everything's going gravy, I'm really not learning. You know what I mean? Because I'm just at a coast. But when stuff hits the fan and stuff goes wrong, that's when I gotta, you know, overcome that situation, whatever that case may be, and, you know, do the best that CJ can.
I love it. Well, CJ, thank you so much for being on here. Now, last thing, real quick, you were on record saying that Michigan's 2023 national championship should be vacated because they're cheaters and that Jim Harbaugh is an overrated coach and J.J. McCarthy should have gone undrafted. What did you mean by that?
Well, technically.
So that's all the time we have for today. This is the Mental Defectives Podcast. Hackers, Concrete Impressions, Milligram, Jerry with a G.
Go blue.
We'll catch you next. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.